Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my favorite 45 minutes of the week. I'm David Maricatani with Mark Austrian or Grant Turner. We are weighing in. We're made possible by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by our good friends at Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. We are officially in wrestling season. We're recording this on Thursday, November 18th. GT was kind enough to text us last night and remind us Big Ten Wednesdays are out. And it kicked off big, right, Grant? A couple of big upsets right out of the gate.
Yeah, fireworks started off at like 125. I think Cronin and Moore. And then basically just chaos ensued between, 33, 41, 49, 57. So it was great wrestling. Shane Sparks and Jim Gibbons killing it already. Super pumped. So
Sparks is highly caffeinated early.
Hey, he's been doing some. Yeah, he's been waiting for this. This is Shane's time to shine. So
for sure, we're gonna come.
Were there any mat returns? That's all I want to know. Was there a mat return yesterday?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, there we go. So listen, I'm wrong a lot of the time. We're gonna start out with something I was actually right about. Jimmy Kennedy goes to Penn State. Jake Varner gets promoted to the RTC coach. It's always been interesting to me that Nittany Lion didn't technically have a head coach of the club. A lot of these schools are using that extra slot to recruit. You have some, like you have a Mark Perry Jr., you have a lot of people like that on board at different schools. So Mark, when you saw the announcement that Varner was moving over to the RTC slot and Kennedy's coming on to the staff, what were your thoughts?
Well, it makes sense for Varner to go over to that spot. I think Penn State wanted to get a smaller guy in the room, David, to be honest with you. That's just my opinion. I'm not sure. But I think Cody's, 57-pounder in college. So, they brought in a 41-pounder.
Kennedy, not Cody.
Yes, I know Kennedy is a 41-pounder. I'm saying Cody was a 57-pounder in college.
Cody was a 33-pounder in college.
He was.
He wrestled Eric Guerrero in the final.
Cole was the 57-pounder.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Cody was a 33-pounder.
Okay. So I think they wanted somebody for the lower weights to work out with. That's kind of the point I'm getting at.
Sure.
So I think it makes sense. I think Varner's going to he does a great job wherever he's at. So it doesn't really matter if he's in the club or with the team. So he'll do a good job. Penn State's just going to keep getting better and better. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yep. And GT, this being in that international world, there's so much crossover. Kale and Cody and Casey are coaching the guys at the international events and national events on the freestyle side. Varner's not going to stop working with these guys on the folk style side. Basically, it's just an ad. Kennedy is the brother-in-law of David Taylor, and that's kind of where we saw this going, like we said a month ago. So big get for Penn State. Let's talk a little bit about, so this is where we did not get to last week. We made our predictions on all 10 weights. Where we did not get to was our team picks. So that's where we're going to go. So I'm going to pull this up, go to the team picks. So here's the team rankings. Here we go. So these are the team rankings. Mark put these together. Intermat, Flow, and Win all put out team rankings this week. So if you are new to our show, we take those rankings. We take the average. He plugs them in. I sort them out by the average. And then this year I'm going to color code them kind of in tiers where I feel like there's some breaks. So tier 1, Iowa, Penn State. Tier 2, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, Michigan. We're not saying we believe this. We're saying just this is where the points dictated. Tier 3, NC State, Minnesota, Cornell, Northwestern, Ohio State, Mizzou, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, all really within 1 or 2 blood round matches. Pittsburgh's 8 points behind NC State. That's 1 pin in the blood round, literally. So then the next tier down, and these guys looked really good last night, Nebraska, Stanford, Rutgers, Iowa State, North Carolina, who will lose a lot of points going into next week, UNI, Cal Poly, Princeton. So I'm going to do it a couple different ways. I don't think anybody of the three of us are not going to put Iowa and Penn State in our top four. If somebody wants to say otherwise, then you can tell me. So my first question to each of you guys is, who's going to win the tournament? Mark, I'll let you go first.
I think Iowa still wins the tournament. I think Penn State will be within 3 or 4 points. That's how I see the top two going.
Okay. I'm writing this down. GT, who you got?
I think, barring injury, I think Iowa wins it. But I think to Mark's credit and point, I think it's going to be a dogfight. Like, I think it's going to go all the way down to the finals. I think it's going to go down to the last session and potentially even the last matches. I think it's going to be all the way down to the wire. I think it's going to be
awesome.
I just think that this tournament is it's stacked, but I just think that, and I don't think that they're going to get to 121. I think this tournament will be a winner at probably 110, 106-ish.
Not that any of us play fantasy wrestling contests, but that might be a tiebreaker in those.
Yeah, just right here already, November, I'm calling 106.
Okay. All right. I will make the argument why Penn State will win the tournament. They've got 4 returning national champions. They've added Hildebrandt, who's an All-American. They've added Dean, who's an All-American. Kirk Fleet's finally healthy. That feels like they have 7 All-Americans. Bo Bartlett's a world medalist. And they've got Facundo waiting in the wings. So not saying that he can step in and immediately All-American, but they are the typical Penn State team, a ton of top-heavy points, usually have a couple holes, but they have holes where they could score. So like right now, we don't have Hildebrandt in the rankings. So Kirk Fleet, as good as heavyweight is, Kirk Fleet might be able to slide up a spot or two if he's healthy. So I will, just for the sake of argument, I'll pick Penn State to win it. I completely agree with both of you guys. It'll come down to it will not be wrapped up going into the last 10 matches. Be super fascinating. You would have to think they'll start at 33 and go back to 25 if Spencer has a chance to be a 4-timer, which would literally then make it a possibility that he might be wrestling for the team title as well. If you're Penn State, you better be winning by 6.5 points going into that 125 match. I don't care who Spencer's wrestling. Okay. Is it safe to say that you guys both have Penn State at second?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so obviously I'll have Iowa at second. So now let's do this. Let's pick 3rd, 4th, 5th. GT, you can go first.
Oh boy.
Okay. Third, I'm going to take Michigan.
Okay.
I think 4th, I'm going to take Oklahoma State.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take Missouri.
Okay. Mark, you can't pick Iowa for all 4 spots, Mark. That's what GT told
I understand, David. I am very aware of that. But I could take Iowa State, UNI,
and Wartburg.
I mean, they're close.
Grandview, you can take Grandview before.
Yeah, absolutely. We're coming for a title.
Well, no, Grandview needs to be at number 1. So we'll leave them in NAIA. Let's do, I think Oklahoma State takes 3rd. I really do. I think they got a solid team this year. I like Michigan at 4, and I think we're not giving Arizona State any love whatsoever, but I think they're a very good team. But I think I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to put Nebraska at number 5.
Oh, I had written down ASU. So you're OSU, Michigan, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of a stretch, isn't it, David?
Not really.
They got some freaking talent, buddy. And especially
hey, let's put it this way. Nebraska was at 29 points. They're going to be probably at 40 points next week because Peyton Robb's going to be in the top 8. Here's what's crazy. They beat North Carolina 8 out of 10 matches and Chad Red lost. So, yep. You would think Chad Red would win. I'm not saying North Carolina's not good at that weight, but Chad Red always wrestles well in March. So, I mean, he's going to probably All-American. So, all right. I'm going to take OSU third. I'm going to take ASU fourth. And I'm going to take Cornell fifth. I think they got a chance to come through and really get some good seeds, in a couple ways. Like I think Vito's got a chance to be on the other side of Spencer. I think they got some young talent out there. The Cardenases of the worlds, the Focas of the worlds, Darmsted's back. We kind of forget about him a little bit. So anyway, so those are our picks. Before I forget, GT, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to see you tomorrow, right? In Georgia?
Yes. Yep.
Wings are on me. I'm paying for me and Mark. So.
Oh, you're not buying me wings?
Hey.
You lost.
Hey, what we'll
How
do
did you win?
Well, we got time. We got time.
Hey, Mark, I'm covering your debt, and now you won.
I don't know you wings. I owe Grant wings.
Right.
You're not covering my debt. I'll buy Grant wings. I live by him.
All right, that's fine. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about what happened this past week, and we'll go into the rankings based on that. So here are the upsets. At 25, Cody Russell from App State moves up to 133. Steve O'Poulin beat Moulton, but Jacob Camacho's still the starter. So when we look at the rankings there's not a ton of changes. If you look here, really very, very little change at the top. We're just going to kind of click back and forth between these. I still think probably the one that's the most interesting to me is and I'll have to talk to Christian Thompson. We need to thank him from fantasygrade.com for getting us these rankings. They've got his program has Ragusin and Medley ranked in here. Ragusin will probably be at 33. So I don't think there's a lot to add here. 33, we go back to the upsets. So shout out to Trey Crawford. He had a good week. He beat Kellen March. He would be in the rankings right now. Schmidt's hurt. And then Cody Russell beat Van Fleet from Air Force, beat his teammate, but he lost to Brock Hudkins. So I'm kind of flying through these because we're going to get to some stuff that are real talking points. 141. Andrew Alirez gets the only win in the duel against Alan Hart. We'll see where he moved in the rankings. Jesse Vasquez had a big weekend from Arizona State. And Keyshawn Clark, the transfer to North Carolina from American, beat Chad Red. The Clark-Red match results literally happened, 12 hours ago, 14 hours ago? So they won't be in these rankings. The other ones will be. So we start here. You see what they did with Alan Hart. They dropped him. They dropped him down to essentially 13. Alirez moves up a little bit. So that's going to hurt Mizzou in the team rankings right now. A couple people don't have Real Woods ranked. Intermat doesn't because he's not wrestling right away. And then Keyshawn Clark was 17 and Chad Red was 6. So Mark, I'll ask you this first. If you were in charge of the rankings and assuming there's no other upsets this weekend, what do you do with Chad Red and Keyshawn Clark?
Well, I think Keyshawn Clark goes up right where Red would have been. I don't
Whoa. You're going to move him above Demas?
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. Ian Parker's not wrestling at 41 right now. We don't think he's probably going to be at 49 for Iowa State. So, I mean, and I would probably move him ahead of Carlson because Carlson's wrestled some kids, but I don't know how far you're going to drop him. Red's going to be an All-American. I mean, I don't think there's any question in my mind or in a lot of people's minds.
Wait. Before you go to Red, you're going to move Clark all the way up to 6. You're going to move him ahead of Demas. You're going to move him ahead of Real Woods, and you're going to move him ahead of Alirez. I'm just making sure that's what you're saying.
I'm going to move Red down to about 9. Probably move Demas up because he has been an All-American. Probably move Real Woods up ahead of him and then put Alirez in front of that and then Red behind him.
And Clark where?
Clark's going to move up in front of Red.
Okay. So you're going to meet him in the middle.
I'm going to meet him right in the middle. Red's going to be probably right around 9 or 10 and put.
They'll both be 10, 11, 12, and Clark will be one slot above it.
Yes.
Okay. So GT, I didn't watch the match. Was it a 1-1 match and then there was a takedown in overtime? Is that what happened?
Yep.
Who had the better scoring opportunities the whole match? Or was there not a lot?
I mean, I haven't watched a lot of Chad Red matches in the past year. I mean, I watched him a lot when he was a lot younger in his career. And this is kind of the first couple of times I've watched Keyshawn Clark. It was like just tactical, like close the gap, blast double. And like there was a couple of very, very, very good scrambles, like where Chad Red was in on one and Keyshawn Clark like basically just hipped out of it. Same thing for Red. So there was multiple scoring opportunities. It wasn't like it was just a snore fest. So those guys went after each other, but it was it was a lot more explosion type wrestling. Like shot attempt, back out, shot attempt, back out. But I mean, Clark looked good. He looked really stingy. But I think, Red just didn't have a lot of what he normally would do on display.
Yep. And I would think that Clark is probably benefiting from the Jameel Kelly experience, like same weight, obviously Ramos is, smaller, but Keyshawn Clark used to train with John Morrison, and John Morrison would text me all the time and say how good that kid was. So I think he's a sort of a low key guy. If Mark's right, which is what I think will happen, and that's why I clarified it, he doesn't jump to 6, but they probably him and Red both end up in that 9 through 12 range, I think is where we'll see them next week, is again, holding everything else constant, which may not happen. Then he's in the rankings, he's in a blood round match. And you wrestle a guy in a blood round match that maybe was scarier on the front side and doesn't want to be there on the backside. Some of these super seniors, especially, a lot of stuff could change. And like you said, Mark, if Parker's actually at 49, then all these guys slot up a spot. Yep. So, okay. So 49, Bo Bartlett beat Corey Crooks. Crooks is transferred to Oregon State from Arizona State. I'm going to have to get Mahler out of here because Josh Edmond is wrestling. So I'll have to tell Christian about that. And then Ridge Lovett beat Sherman last night. So Lovett is 14 in these rankings. Sherman's 10. That feels like we're probably just, I got to look at this with Ian Parker and Jared Dagan too and talk to him about these. But to me, I'll tell you what I think. Lovett was a guy that came on really well at the end of last year, had a great Big Ten tournament, and then Nebraska just didn't have a good national tournament, period. Schultz, Lovett, two of those examples. But he's going to be, right in the hunt this year. And then let me ask you this, GT. Do you think they start Bartlett or do you think they pull Van Ness this year?
Bartlett.
They're going to just stick with him? You feel like that's the move?
I mean, I would give that guy enough opportunities to let him do his thing, and I would stick with him as long as I needed to. But, I bet you they take multiple looks at different tournaments and just say like, hey, all of a sudden, maybe you guys are both in, I don't know, the Penn State Open, which I don't think that they have one, but.
No, I get what you're saying. The Bearcat Open.
I think you give Bartlett enough time to be the guy.
Yeah, and I meant to put this down. At 41, there was wrestle-offs yesterday. Carter Young beat Dusty Hone at Oklahoma State. So it's very possible he's going to start. G. Feller beat Victor V, but G. Feller didn't look good at all against Appus. Not that he lost. He just kind of stopped wrestling for the last 2 minutes, and he did the same thing at the Big 12s. So I think that's something to keep an eye on where they could make a change there. I think I told maybe Mark off the air, I thought at the beginning of the year, Oklahoma State would make 3 changes. I thought Young would eventually start, Victor Voinovich would eventually start, and Serber would eventually start. And Serber did start in the first duel of the year against Stanford. So, okay, we go to 57. Big upset here. Zaff beats Humphreys. And so Humphreys drops to 11. That gives some other guys some moves up. There's also we'll get to the preview. There's going to be some really good matchups this weekend where you don't normally see that many good matchups this early in the year. Here's the other one. Peyton Robb was number 16, and he just beat O'Connor, who was, depending on the rankings, 2 or 3, sort of neck and neck with Deacon. So, Mark, I'll ask you again. I'll go first. I think O'Connor will drop. I think they'll drop him behind Brayton Lee. I think that's how far he'll drop. I think Teamer will go to 3, Lee will go to 4, O'Connor will go to 5. And I think Peyton Robb, I would bump him up above Franek. That's what I would do. Again, holding everything else constant, which never happens in the world of wrestling, especially when you're dealing with a bunch of 20-year-olds, give or take. But just saying, that's what I would do. How would you handle it? Because we would have these conversations every Sunday.
Yeah, and I want to see kind of what else happens this weekend. Obviously, Young and Quincy Monday are going to wrestle.
Okay, but we're saying that doesn't happen.
Let's say right now, I would agree with you, David. I think that's pretty good evaluation. I would probably move O'Connor down to behind Lee, right ahead of Young. And I think I would probably move Robb up to – see, here's the thing. Robb has beaten Young before. He's dropping down from 165 this year. He lost to Lee a couple years ago, or to Young a couple years ago, and then beat him in the Big Tens. So I'm not so sure you don't move Peyton Robb right ahead of Caleb Young and put Caleb Young right behind him. Last time out, he beat him. So, I can see him doing it different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so at 65, so I watched the last minute of this match, and you guys are Iowa guys. Marinelli, there's no big really changes in the rankings. Marinelli beats Patrick Kennedy 3-2. I think that's, if you're an Iowa fan, there's a really good way to look at that, which is Patrick Kennedy's going to be really good, and we need him to be really good because 7/10 of the team is going to be graduating next year. If you're an Iowa hater, you go, hey, man, Alex Marinelli barely beat this freshman that hasn't won anything yet in college. So, GT, you're up there. I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but which way of those two ways do you tend to look at it more?
I mean, Alex has proven, once again, like if he's winning 3-2 or 5-2 or 4-2 or whatever it does, he's just doing his thing, getting some matches in. I'm excited about the future. If that guy, basically wrestles one of the best guys in the country at, to a close match. So you take it either way. You'd be like, hey, Alex is just doing his thing. The future's bright. This kid wrestled, a guy in the room. And you guys both know if you've been wrestling people in the room, everything's a lot tighter no matter what. Like
the room helps the worst guy, not the better guy. Yeah.
And once again, there could be some, lightning in a bottle matches that we don't get to see that happen in the basement of Carver. And, all of a sudden everything gets super tight. So, I think for Alex, I'm happy that he's healthy. He just, he won the tournament, now move on.
For sure. All right. So 74, Mark, the biggest upset probably of the weekend, Jackson Turley, who was an All-American last year, kind of a surprise from Rutgers as a freshman. I think he took 7th. Yep. He loses to Worthing from Clarion. And so you see Turley drops down to 13 and, could arguably be a little bit lower. So when you think about that, is it, and you look at this weight, I mean, obviously he can work his way back in, but those top 6 are pretty salty, right?
Oh, yeah, they are. Without a doubt. I mean, I think you could even probably go down a few more. I think Focus for real. So, I mean, it's a good weight. I think Turley had a great national tournament last year. He kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody expected him to have that kind of a national tournament. So maybe back to reality just a little bit early in the year, probably not in the best shape yet. So a lot's going to happen. But for him just to drop that far, he probably could have dropped a few more spots. It wouldn't have surprised me. And I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm just saying you got to go with what you see right now. And right now he's not, a top 8 guy. So, I think it's fair.
Another guy to keep an eye on here is Donnell Washington. A bunch of these sources don't have him ranked, so maybe they know something that he's not wrestling this year, or he's injured or something like that, which would then obviously bump everybody else up a slot. So, okay, so we go to 84. And Max Lyon lost to Cleveland State from Nassar. Probably the match that everybody's talking about that didn't impact the rankings at all. Abe Assad loses to Whiting, the high school kid that's been recruited, Clayton Whiting, who's going to a Mizzou recruit. So since you guys are Iowa people, M-I-Z, good job, Mizzou. And then probably the other big note here is that Louis Dupre is going up to 97. So everybody, you know, in those top echelon gets a bump. So, I mean, that really helps, like the Truaxes, the Gears, the Bolins of the world. I'm just going to say this. I think Hunter Bolin might be the most dangerous 8 seed or 8 ranked guy in the country right now. Like, he was literally ranked, I think, 2nd in the country last year going into the ACCs. And he lost to Hidley, who he'd never lost to. He'd beaten him like 6 times, always really close. So he's probably ranked where he deserves to be, but I think he's a guy that has a good chance to place in higher than 8th, which is, you know, interesting because we love Amin. We love Hidley. At least one of you guys picked Keckheisen to make the finals. So maybe we don't think he's in that top, maybe 4 tier, but I'm not sure if Hunter Bolin took 5th in nationals, anybody would be really shocked. Do you guys, am I crazy, or do you guys think that's on point?
I think you're 100% right. I mean, Biznatsky, he wrestled really well last year. He was kind of Rutgers really came up with some kids in those, you know, those 2 weights, 70, this weight and 77. So 74, I'm sorry. So, you know, work out together. They both performed really well, but you know, it would not surprise me if Hunter Bolin was not top 4 in the country.
Yeah. And Taylor Venz, Grant, you watched the match last night, the Taylor Venz match. Where was that referee? He was on the completely wrong side. And his look was like my look in high school when a referee would miss the pin. Like, are you kidding me? So, Mark, Venz hits the kid in a whip over. I think it was Dan Shade's son, Mark Shade, and he's pinned. Like, he's for sure pinned. And the guy's on the clear around the other side, like looking at his feet, counting back points, but not even circling around to see his back. And they did a freeze frame of Venz later. It was freaking hilarious. So you guys are in Iowa. Are you hearing anything about the Nelson Brands Assad situation? Is there going to be a wrestle off? Has it been decided? Is it still in flux?
Haven't heard anything. I'll be over there today, but yeah, I haven't heard anything about that.
All right, well, get the microphone out, get him to reveal all the secrets, and then just send it to me, okay? And we'll post it immediately. So, okay, so 197. To me, this is an interesting weight. 3 things here. 2 of them we know about, but we really haven't talked about. One is Cornell has Darmstead. They also have Cardenas. And if he hadn't left, they'd have Max Dean. So it's kind of crazy how good Cornell would have been at 197. Penn State's got Dean and Beard, which we know, and Dupre comes up here. So let me ask you this, Mark, because this is more in your realm. Where would you have ranked Dupre, and where do you think we would have ranked Dupre?
Oh, wow. I mean, this is such a difference, and there's so, you know, I'm looking at, I don't have a problem where he's at. I would probably have ranked him ahead of Tanner Sloan. I don't think I would have ranked him ahead of Schultz, but I think Schultz is kind of low. That's just from what I've seen over the years. And obviously last night he won by a major. So I think Schultz is probably underranked. Dupre probably should slide up with him a little bit, maybe right in the North Fleet area. That's probably where I would have put him, because North Fleet wrestled really, really well last year till the national tournament. Did not have a good national tournament. So I would not have a problem starting him right in that area right there.
I think if I was doing the rankings, Buchanan would go ahead of Norfleet because Buchanan placed last year. Norfleet didn't. The year before, Bruckey and Norfleet both placed. So I'd have to look up and see, who was ahead of each other and rank them that way. And then I don't know if I would put Dupre above those two or behind those two because he placed higher, but at a lower weight. Yep. And those guys would all be ahead of Schultz, even though I think Schultz could beat any of those guys on a given day just because Schultz had a bad national tournament. And we start the rankings out, at least you and me did based on that. So yep. Anyway, so GT, you're a coach, so you're combing the portal every day. You're making sure your kids are happy so they're not going into the portal every day. You think there's any chance that we see a Cardenas or Beard in the portal this year? And if so, those guys, as good as this weight is, those guys could have an impact for like a contending team that needs a 97 pounder.
Yeah. I mean, the portal is, very accessible for those guys that need to find a new home. So if they ever feel like that they need to, basically test the waters, I mean, they could always test and see like what happens. And, especially if, they got to try to find a new place, right? And Dean being, excuse me, if Dean's like still a junior and Beard is, not wanting to sit another 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I got to find a new home. Or, they sit and ride the wave out and, maybe try to vie for the spot. It just really depends on the kid. So, yeah. But yeah, I think in the world of the transfer portal now, more so than ever, some of these guys, if they're not getting the fair shake that they feel that they deserve or they want to start right away, it's definitely a tool for those athletes to be able to utilize.
For sure. And I mean, when you look at the fact like Beard was an All-American last year, I mean, he was in that bracket that kind of fell apart, but I mean, he was an All-American. So, I mean, I'm looking at the top schools at 197 and it's kind of interesting. Iowa's got Warner, Penn State obviously has Dean, Arizona State has Norfleet, Oklahoma State has Ferrari, Michigan has Bruckey, NC State would be a home for somebody. Minnesota doesn't have a super top ranked guy. Obviously Cornell does, Northwestern might be a hard school to transfer into. Ohio State's probably looking for a 97 pounder. They would probably welcome one of those kids with open arms. So it'd be interesting to see if that happens. So, all right, we go to 285. Heinzelman loses to Wolfgram. So we'll see how far that bumped him down. Heinzelman. He dropped a lot. He's down to 23 because he was in like the high teens last week. And then we talked about Serber instead of Harris, and Serber comes into the rankings at 27. Two of the people don't have him ranked yet because I think they probably have Austin Harris ranked. So if we probably looked at him, they probably have Austin Harris's name in here somewhere too. So for those people that don't know, Luke Serber, kid out of Tuttle, Oklahoma. I know him probably more than most people because I'm friends with his father, Matt, who is the coach and now the AD there. Serber also won the junior duels for Oklahoma one year when I was doing the commentary with Guerrero and Hardell Moore, and he had to win by a pointless tech fall to win it and did so against Fidel Mayora. I think, GT, you were probably there. And he won 10-0 at 160 pounds as a junior in high school. So, but his dad's a big guy. Serber's obviously a big kid. The reason why I mentioned this, Serber's a kid that's going to place higher than he is now, where he's ranked. He has a lot of skill. He's a guy that's wrestled. Like, I see you nodding, GT. You've watched him wrestle. Would you agree with what I'm saying?
Yep.
He's got skill, man. He can really wrestle, and he just happens to have gotten bigger. He's on the Derek White weightlifting program that they do. Oklahoma State doesn't ever recruit a regular heavyweight. They just get some guy and lock him in there with Coach Gary and get him strong. Shout out to Gary C. He's the man down there, strength and conditioning guy. So
David, are you saying you think he could be an All-American this year?
Well, here's what's interesting. I just found Austin Harris. He's ranked 9th. He's ranked 8th. So if he beat out Austin Harris, I mean, you know how that goes, right? Like just because I beat you doesn't mean I beat anybody you ever beat or something like that, right? But
Sure.
theoretically, that's how it goes. I don't know. I mean, to me, there's a top 5 tier here with Stevenson, Paris, Cassiope, Schultz, Kirkfleet. I find it hard to believe anybody will crack that top 5. I don't know what order that's going to finish. I'm pretty sure I know who's going to win it. 2, 3, 4, 5, I think is going to have a lot to do with the draws. Although 4 of those 5 are in the conference. So I think it'll be where Schultz, you know, however they finish in the Big Ten will be the seeds and insert Schultz here depending on his season. But it wouldn't, I mean, GT, if Luke Serber's in the blood round against Wyatt Hendrickson or against Tate Orndorff, I don't think he's a massive underdog, do you?
No, but I do feel that the heavyweights, there's a lot of proven talent all the way down to, 15 through 18.
Yeah.
Like Jordan Wood, he's super good. Matt Stencil, been around for a long time. Christian Lance, been in a lot of matches.
Yeah.
Carter Isley, senior, Gas Tank Gary, been in other matches. AJ Neville's been in tons of matches. Like Brandon Metz, world team member, University U23 world team member, been in a lot of matches for NDSU. So, with a guy like Serber, who's like a young guy, which we've seen a ton in recent years, young freshman coming in and making a splash pretty early against a lot of proven talent. I just, I got to see him do it. I got to see him do it in a duel. I got to see him.
Sure.
I got to see him do it. I got to see him do it 1 or 2 times before he gets like a Wyatt Sheets, like he gets the call to go to the NCAA tournament and then all of a sudden becomes an All-American.
Yeah.
But to your point, Harris being 9th, I don't have a problem with having Serber in a round of 12 match up against somebody like Hendrickson or Andrews is another one. He's been around forever.
Yeah.
Same thing with Hilger. I don't have a problem with those matches and knocking somebody off because it is the national tournament and that happens all the time.
Yep. Well, he's going to be able to earn himself a chance to earn himself a good seed because Hendrickson, Andrews, and Elam are all in the Big 12s. So number 10, 11, and 13. So, whoever wins that's probably going to get a top 8 seed. So, or at least, top 10 seed. I feel very comfortable saying that. So, okay.
And Isley's not bad from you and I either, David.
That's what GT said and agreed. Listen, I'm not trying to put Serber on the podium. I'm just saying I think he's going to do better than 27th, which is 0-2.
Well, to your point, what you were saying, David, and this is something where I think a lot of people don't understand. When you come up to a heavyweight and you've wrestled in high school at much, much lower weights, you learn to wrestle different. So he's learned to wrestle like a middleweight guy where he's shooting, he's turning the corner. He's able to do those things. When you can do that at a heavyweight, that's a big advantage against kids that are used to just muscling and pushing people around. You're not used to guys getting in on your leg and turning, a high crotch into a double real quick. You're not as quick as a heavyweight as you are, 165 pounder. There's a big difference. So if you have those skills, you can go a long way in this sport.
Yeah. And we got like maybe 7-8 minutes left. He's not John Smith, but he's got some low-level attacks, and low-level attacks at heavyweight, if you can actually get there, it's way better because you're not battling between their knees and their chest. So that's where their strength is. So this is the schedule. We'd delete what happened last night, but some big duels Friday night: Ohio State, Virginia Tech, Princeton, Iowa, Oklahoma, Arizona State. Might have to find you guys, GT, and get some laptops pulled up because there'll be some good wrestling going on. I just talked to Lou Rosselli. Demas isn't making the trip, but they've got some other good matchups there. 197 is a good match. 33 is a good match. 25 is an interesting match. 57 is an interesting match. Princeton, 25 and 57 against Iowa are potentially interesting matches if Glory can find a way to close the gap, keep it close. Ohio State, Virginia Tech is loaded with good matches. Mark and I were talking about that a little bit off the air. I think VTech might be sort of favored, like 5 to 4 to 1 is kind of what we said, Mark. Then Saturday, Lindenwood Open And then the Life University Open, which is where I'm going to see Grant Turner. They were kind enough to bring me down there, put me on the mic. The teams that have won the last gazillion NAI titles will be there wrestling together. And then Saturday night, Oklahoma State, Minnesota. So we got a few minutes left. These were our picks. GT, have at it. So this is what Mark and I picked. I'm glad we did this ahead of time because time-wise, we didn't have a lot of time left. Mastro or McKee? GT, who you got?
McKee.
Major or decision or tech or pin?
Decision.
Okay. 33, Fix versus Jones.
6 for Fix.
41, maybe Carter Young now.
I'll say Carter Young for a decision.
Okay. You want to change your pick, Mark, since it's Carter Young?
No, I'm fine.
Blockus versus G Feller.
Blockus for a decision.
Sheets and Brayton Lee.
Lee with a major.
Oh, okay. All right. Whitlake and Sparks.
I'll take Whitlake by decision.
Plott and Kradiger.
I'll take Plott for a decision.
Gear and Salazar.
Gear with the major.
Ferrari and Joels.
Ferrari for a decision.
Gable against Serber or Harris.
Gable for a pin.
That is some decisiveness right there. Let's see where you got him. $22.16, Mark. That's where the smart money is. That's for me and GTR.
Oh boy.
So of course, GT, you know it's going to be 19-18 Minnesota now.
Well, I think
I'm not putting wings on this, by the way. Just so you know, Grant, I'm not going to be your wing guy in Des Moines.
Hey, you know what, Mark? We'll just do it on a weekly basis, man. You just owe me on every Wednesday or whatever it is the day we pick. There's some interesting matchups here because, I mean, you know, G Feller and Blockus, that's going to be a great match. Sparks and Whitlake is going to be a great match. I'm really excited about seeing some of these matchups, man.
Plott Kradiger, I think, is low-key good because they're both kind of at the same level. You know, Plott didn't look great against Stanford, but he's getting healthy. Kradiger's the transfer from Wisconsin. That's one of the matches I think Minnesota would need to flip to win the duel. So
you guys are, you got Sheets, a returning All-American, Russell and Lee, a returning All-American.
Yeah.
And Grant, you win a major decision. Do you really think that's a good move there?
I think Brayton Lee is a dog, man. I think he's a beast. And, you know, once again, there's no knock on Wyatt Sheets. I just think that Sheets is maybe going to slip up once in the match. And I think Lee's going to get like a 4-point turn.
Okay.
I just think that like Lee is maybe 3 to 4 points, maybe better than him on like a normal day. And then I think he's going to get one or two turns, like some cheap tilts or something and do that.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun duel to watch. I don't know where I'll be. And I think GT, you'll be on the road, but hopefully we'll figure out where these things are being streamed. So one last thing that's really not part of what we normally do, but the Jay Robinson camps announced that they're closing. I never went, but I know a lot of kids that did. I don't know if you guys went, but you did go, GT?
I did it in 2000. So that's a little subtle joke there because you get the shirt that says I did it.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, so that shirt was, it was the 28-day camp. You could probably attest to how hard that camp was. But that shirt was like your red badge of courage, you know, like that you had put in the time and the work. And that camp was a lot about just making kids mentally tougher as much as it was about technique and that sort of thing. So Jay Robs had an impact on thousands of young men and probably women at the end, girls, when girls were going at the end throughout the years, both as a college coach, but probably more so in terms of quantity of people that he's impacted through those camps. Just another casualty of what happened with the pandemic. I'm certainly sorry to hear that, but big shout out to him. So we will be back next week. It'll be mostly review because it's the Thanksgiving week. Won't be a lot of preview. But I think there's going to be a lot of changes, and there'll be some duels that we reviewed. Check it out. For Mark and Grant, I'm David. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening, and sharing. Talk to you all next week.